topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Everybody, and welcome to Triversity Talk. I am your host, Wendy Stewart, and I'm so happy to be here with you tonight. I'm hoping that everybody is happy to be here with me. So here we are, middle of the week, Wednesday, hump day. I don't know why they call it hump day. That makes absolutely no sense to me. And you know what? As far as the days of the week go, I am completely discombobulated because we had that holiday Monday. But I used the holiday very smartly. I made a wonderful video, which will be released in May, for a song written with comedian Icavelli. Well, it's a funny song. Of course, you know it's a funny song because Ike and I are comedians. We do that kind of thing. But it is very funny. And we decided to film the video in Times Square Monday night on a holiday weekend. Yes, you can only imagine how many people were out. We had every walk of life that was out there. We had people that were, for lack of a better word, completely deranged. We had regular run-of-the-mill street people. We had lots of tourists. We had people that just wanted to be in the video, so of course we let them. And you know how everybody's always saying in New York City, you can never find a cop? We even had them too. How about that? And they wanted to be in the video too. So I can't disclose much more about what we did, but we're going to have a release party for it. And we hope everybody will join us. So my guest tonight, I love the guests that I have tonight because I actually know this person for a while. We met at a wonderful organization called the Generations Project that is really about storytelling. And I had them on the show, as a matter of fact. And why is storytelling so important? Well, it bridges the gap between generations. And one of the things the Generations Project does is it brings in young people, people in the middle, people that are seniors, and you all work together. You're given a topic to do storytelling. And I actually was one of their storytellers. I got to do a piece on 9/11. And because of the way they brought it out in me, it made me remember things that I had totally and completely blocked. So my guest tonight is bridging the gap between the generations in the leather community, does a lot of volunteer work, calls himself quiet but recognized member of the leather community, a veteran cyclist of over a dozen AIDS rides, and the founding member of Team Eagle and a board member of the Generations Project. Let's welcome the one and only Thom Cam.
Thank you. Thank you for the welcome, Wendy. Thank you. Thank you.
It's so great to have you here. Yeah, I can see you. You're not as blurry as you were before. My God. I'm just finding more and more when I get the AARP thing, they have this screen you can put over your computer that enlarges everything. Have you seen it?
No, I have not.
Well, of course you haven't seen it because you have to be able to see it, right? But it would certainly be helpful to me, although I don't know anyone that's tried it yet, but I sure am happy to have you on here. How long has it been since we met? When we that was before pre-pandemic, right?
I was aware of you before we met. I was at the storytelling event where you shared your story about 9/11.
That we were, yeah, that's what I'm saying. We did that one. That was really.
Yeah, that was powerful. That was powerful. That was in St. Mark's Church, wasn't it?
That beautiful St. Mark's Church. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we dug deep. The stories were quite incredible, what everybody was doing. And the power of storytelling, as you know, it's like purging, right? It's like a form of purging. It's also a form of therapy because
It can be. It can be. I try not to use it for therapeutic purposes. When I have the opportunity to be a storyteller or share, I try
right.
to remind myself that I'm not there to work through my stuff through the story. It kind of happens anyway, because
Well,
as you develop your story, these
right.
things come up and you process them and find places for them.
I think that's what I mean by therapy, because as the stories come up, right? When we're telling the story to the group, we're purging, we're sharing, but we're also purging, because all of a sudden in your mind, you come upon things and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I remembered that. And we do exercises that get our brains going to make us pull up those memories. It's very powerful stuff.
It totally is. Totally is. There've been more than a few very personal, deeply buried points about who I am and things that got me to where I am now. That made some of them that weren't actually very comfortable and pleasant, but I had to face them, acknowledge them, and include them in the story to move the story forward. So yeah,
Right.
it is very, very much a therapeutic thing. But it's not just powerful for us storytellers, no matter how old we are. Also for the folks hearing this stuff. It's the same
Yes.
thing as being in group therapy. When you're sharing
Yeah.
some things that you're processing and working with, other people in the group will hear it, relate to it, and find ways to push through it themselves.
No,
Yeah.
that's exactly right, and it's comforting to them,
Mhm.
because as you know, you look out there with the trust thing, right? Because we're divulging secrets about ourselves, our feelings. That's not so easy. And you look at someone and they're shaking their head, and then they come up to you at the end of the workshop and said, "I had that same feeling. I had that same experience." It's really quite beautiful. So you're on the board of the Generations Project
Yeah,
now.
I am. Yeah, I am. There are four of us on the board currently. We're trying to expand the board, and we've been making some good headway since we've started. Since the three of us who are now in our second year on the board jumped on.
So
Yeah,
Melissa Sklar is on the board with you. Isn't Melissa Sklar?
Melissa.
Yeah,
Yes,
I love
powerful.
Melissa Sklar. Yeah.
She's so powerful.
Yeah. Melissa has been on the show, of course, also. And she's
Okay.
just an amazing person.
Yeah, I'm a little intimidated by her, not because of anything she does, but just because of all that she is.
Oh,
Um,
that's like that, but that's very honest. Thank you for saying that. I know she's
yes,
a powerhouse, and politically has done so much and is so smart, and is willing to share her life experience, right, with people, which is what it's all about. So you are you're Hawaiian. Aloha.
yeah. Thank you. Aloha, ahui ho. I'm actually not Hawaiian in
You're not.
ancestry, but I grew up in Hawaii.
Well, that counts to me. I grew up in the Bronx. My God.
So
You had,
I'm a Hawaiian, like you're a New Yorker.
right there. There
It's,
you go. But what a beautiful place. Now, are you from Honolulu originally?
I grew up in Honolulu. Yes, I have the privilege of having grown up in Honolulu when it was becoming a major city.
So
Um,
it's still beautiful and
so
untouched. And now, was your family in the army? I asked that because a lot of people that are from are army based people.
yeah, a lot of them are, but not the case with my story. I
Okay.
am the descendant of plantation workers.
Ah, that's
Yeah,
really. Oh my gosh. So yeah, your family they must have a million stories.
yeah, but oddly enough, they didn't want to share them. I didn't get enough from my parents and my grandparents about their lives growing up. Um, didn't get enough,
So
which
yeah,
yeah,
your grandparents worked the plantation. So were they the first generation?
my great grandparents worked in the sugarcane and
Wow.
pineapple fields.
Wow.
Yes, yeah, they were the first generation. My first generation on our side.
Talk about stories though, Thom. I'm sorry they didn't share more with you because now when we think of Hawaii, right, we think of it's gorgeous, the big hotels. That's what and of course a show like Hawaii 5-0, everybody thinks that's what it's like. But old Hawaii, what I call old Hawaii, was about sugarcane and bananas and everything that went on during that time.
Sugarcane and pineapples, basically.
And the
Yes,
pineapples,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
And pineapples. So what's your ethnic background?
Funny you should ask. I grew up believing that I was half Chinese and half Portuguese, despite some of the dark rumors of skeletons in a closet.
Right.
And it was confirmed for me just 5 years ago that I'm actually half Portuguese and half Filipino.
Oh my gosh, that's wow. And you only found out 5 years ago. Did you do like ancestry.com?
I did 23andMe. My next step is to do ancestry.com, which will let me know who my unknown siblings are. I'm not in a rush. I'm not in a rush.
But you're going to do it. I haven't done it. I haven't done it because like I know too many people, and I really do know them. They're not just like Facebook friends that I have no idea who they are. As a person, I meet people for coffee. I meet them, right? So
Yeah.
if I add in like relatives, long lost relatives and stuff like that, that's really good. It's too many people.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I said, I'm actually, I work very hard at maintaining the good healthy relationships I have in my life. And
I like that.
In new siblings at this point, it's like, okay, let me just wait for a bit before doing that. I'm not in a rush.
Not in a rush for new siblings. No, I hear you. So you left beautiful Hawaii, aloha, and was New York the first place you came to?
I actually moved to San Francisco for a year.
You did?
When I was 19 in the mid 70s, which you can imagine was a wonderful, wild time. And then moved to New York in the early 80s.
You just hit every single place as things were getting revved up. I know I was in San Francisco late 70s, not for a long time. And I really loved it, by the way. And then came to New York City. I was born and raised in the Bronx, but I came to New York City in the late 70s and really started moving and shaking here like 79, 80.
So for you, was the Bronx, San Francisco, Manhattan?
It was the Bronx, Florida. That really shook me up. Then a trip to San Francisco. That I got to go there on vacation, and I fell in love with it. Believe me, I could have easily moved there. Then LA. Then came back here and got settled in Manhattan. In the days of I'm going to say it before the shit hit the fan, when it was party time here. And I did the whole Studio 54 thing, Thursdays and Sundays, Paradise Garage, Club Flamingo. I know these are all familiar to you. So that was my whole background here. We were here at the same time, but our paths never crossed.
Right. Not then anyway. Yes.
Not then. It's funny with this show because
they might have, we just didn't realize it, didn't know it.
Right. Maybe we just didn't know it. So you San Francisco, but obviously what you were looking for, you were home here in New York.
Mm-hmm. As soon as I walked out the front door of the friend's place I was initially staying at and walked down Broadway from the 96th Street to the Battery, I thought,
yeah, I know that walk.
Like home. No question. No question.
Right. Didn't need a palm tree from Hawaii at all. You were like the dirt.
No. I've had people ask me when they find out I'm from Hawaii, why did you leave Hawaii and come to New York? And my own response really is, without being smug in any ways, have you seen New York? I love Hawaii. Don't get me wrong. I love Hawaii. Just came back from 3 weeks in Honolulu.
I know. I knew you were there, because I had contacted you before about coming on the show and everything. And I'm thinking, oh God, I wonder if he's just going to bag the show because he's like in Honolulu,
No, I had to come back. My life is here.
Yeah.
And I'm at peace with that. And just really grateful that I had the time to spend there.
And really lucky you to have the best of both worlds. So when you came here, what did you work as when you came here?
Oh God. Oh God. My first few jobs here in the city back in the early 80s when I was like in my late 20s were in restaurants and health clubs. Not surprisingly. I worked as a waiter eventually at some restaurants in Soho. I even worked for a short period of time at Spring Street Market, which was like an actual deli market on Spring Street, long gone.
It's not there anymore.
And I had a wonderful experience there where I'm actually working behind the deli counter, small, tiny deli counter, right? At night, all by myself. And I'm really new to New York. I don't really know all these meats. And in walks Jeffrey Holder, who I was aware of because of everything he had done. And he walks up to me, towering through the deli, right up to the counter, and he looks at me and he says, "Hello, do you have any tongue?" And I did not. I lost my tongue. I couldn't speak to him. I said, I just went back there and started talking some tongue for him.
I had a tongue, but now I can't talk.
He took it away.
Okay, but that's, you know what, like, what an odd thing to ask for. You know, I thought you were going to say roast beef or something like that.
Yeah, like tongue. I had no idea what tongue was. I just followed the little labels. But yeah.
So those were some of your first jobs, and you also act when you came here. You were acting.
I moved to New York to fulfill my dream of being a dancer on Broadway. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that dream, because that's tough. Was that the reason you didn't stay in San Francisco, because it's harder there?
Well, actually, when I went to San Francisco in the mid-'70s, I spent the entire year working in a restaurant as a busboy, and taking ballet classes, jazz classes, and acrobatic classes. So I was already steering myself in this direction. But then went back to Hawaii for what I thought was going to be a summer, and I started getting performing gigs
in Hawaii. Oh,
so
nice.
The first one was a little tiny little paid gig with the Hawaii Opera Theater, and then I joined a community college theater group, and then professional children's theater group, and then on and on and on, ballet soloist in a ballet company, a bunch of other little gigs, and I basically stayed there for 7 years before moving to New York. So when I left Hawaii, I was sort of like I don't want to say big fish, but an accomplished working fish in a very small pond. And I knew that.
Look at the beautiful pond that you were in.
I know.
It was probably filled with koi and fancy goldfish, right? You were in Hawaii.
That's part of the reason why I didn't leave. It was just so comfortable and nice being there.
That's interesting. So you had come to New York, worked waiter jobs, worked the deli counter, and then went back to Hawaii.
Oh, no. From New York to San Francisco, back to Hawaii for 7 years, then to New York.
Right. But it was 2 stints here, which is really interesting. So when you came here the first time, you basically stuck your toe in the water to test the temperature, and then end up 7 years working back in Hawaii. Interesting roundabout way.
Yes. Yeah. My first trip to New York was pretty special and wonderful. I was working with Honolulu Theater for Youth, a professional acting company that didn't pay us very much, and we had done a show that we developed, toured the state with, and then did a tour that took us to the Goodman Theater, the Kennedy Center, and the Lincoln Center. Yes, but between Chicago and New York, we had a week and a half break, and I just stayed. I came here to New York, stayed with a friend, and I thought I need to work. So I got myself a job as a waiter at night at the Village Gate, serving cocktails.
Oh my God, the Village. Boy, are you pulling up places from yesteryear. That was great, the Village Gate.
It was a wonderful place. Yeah.
You know, how cool to be able to say that you worked there too.
I know, that's why I just did.
Because you're a cool guy.
I don't know about that.
So you're a dancer, and you were here in New York. How did you first get involved in the leather community?
That's a long tail story.
Well, good. Let me see. I'll check the time right here. Good.
Okay.
So we can do the abridged version of it.
Okay.
In the LGBTQ spectrum, right? There's different groups of people, and it breaks down, right? And I know a lot of people in the leather community. I don't know how that happened, but I go to leather events. I don't know. I like the guys in the leather community. They're all like very polite and nice.
Yes.
And that is something that I really enjoy, and they are respectful of women. And they make you feel good. So like for you, how did leather become the thing for you coming from Hawaii? Are there leather groups in Hawaii?
No official leather groups as far as I know.
Really?
But
We have in New York.
I did become aware on this last trip that there is a dungeon space for rent in Waikiki.
I can only see what that ad looks like. Dungeon space for rent in Waikiki. Beautiful view of the ocean.
Or sub-ocean level, I'd imagine. I'd imagine it's in the basement.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That you have to have your snorkeling gear. So, when you came here, did you first get involved with the Eagle? Is, for people that don't know it, just like this, the oldest leather bar.
Actually, it is not
older.
It's not the oldest leather bar in the country, but it is
in New York.
In New York, in New York City, it's the oldest leather bar.
Or where was the rawhide in all of that? Rawhide. Do you remember
Rawhide was a little leathery bar in Chelsea. But the way it all evolved was back in the 70s. There were leather and Levi bars. There were people would be in there in leather and in Levi's, as opposed to the fancy would-be designer wear in all the other bars. So it was like like a separation of personal style and taste. And I found the guys in the leather and Levi bars to be more attractive altogether, both physically and socially and sexually, even as early as when I was 19 years old living in San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's sort of changed where the idea of a leather and Levi bar doesn't exist anymore. There are leather bars.
Right. There's and everyone's like heavy duty leather. You go to Rock Bar, right? On a bear night, there's lots of leather. Listen, Thom, I love having you here. I didn't even know about the Levi's. I do this show because I love, I'm into culture and people and community. I didn't know about the Levi's. That's so incredible. Leather and Levi's. When did the Levi's go out of fashion?
Oh gosh. Go sometime in the 80s, I guess.
Wow.
Not so much out of fashion, but just became receded in that identity.
Yeah, got obsoleted, you know.
I mean, like most of the guys still show up at leather bars wearing jeans.
Yeah.
Even through So it still carried on. It just kind of like didn't have that label anymore.
It didn't have the label anymore. So you got involved with the Eagle early on when you came here.
No, not at all.
No,
not at all.
Yeah, because I know you have history. You were Mr. Eagle.
Yes. I was hanging out at the Eagle and the Spike.
The Spike, right.
That Spike. Oh, I missed the Spike. That was.
I know.
I have a great love for the Eagle. You can be sure of that. But I missed the Spike. The Spike was a fun bar.
A moment of silence for the Spike. Okay, we had it.
Okay. Yeah, I would hang out at the Eagle and the Spike in the 80s with my buddies and friends. Rarely ever went out by myself. Yeah, it just wasn't like what I did very much.
The Spike was very big in the 80s.
Yes. And then there was a period of time where I wasn't going out very much at all.
Why did you stop? What made you stop going out?
I was in a relationship and very satisfied to stay home on Saturday nights and learn new software.
Whoa, Thom.
Yeah.
To divulge like right here. Yeah, that's cool. You were in a relationship and you were happy.
totally happy and content. There was that same partner and I, who's still my very, very, very dearest and best friend.
Love that.
I
Great.
just celebrated by going to dinner with a couple of other friends and seeing merrily roll on for the fourth time. Well, there was one New Year's Eve. We had a big old party, as we always did back then, in the East Village loft space that we lived in.
Oh, so you had a loft in the East Village? Boy,
Mm.
weren't those the days? Wait, I have to ask you this. Obviously, rent stabilized too, I'm sure.
No. Stabilized, no.
It wasn't?
It wasn't,
But I
unfortunately.
bet the rent was pretty low.
Well, it was loft-like, not really a loft space. It was a Catholic church converted into apartments, and the apartment that we had was 12 feet wide by 12 feet high by 24 feet long,
Oh, that's great. That's a loft space. My God, you can have a great
with,
party.
with an actual bed loft at the end of it above the kitchen.
And the really tall windows, right?
Window. We had one window.
Just one window. You know what? I bet I know where that was. What building was that?
117 East 11th Street, between Webster Hall and the post office.
Oh, I know the block. I was just past that today.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
It's so cool that you used to live there. So you gave great parties.
Oh, we threw great parties in that space. We had wonderful, wonderful parties. But there was one New Year's Eve where my then boyfriend, my still best friend, and I made a New Year's resolution that we would start going out dancing and taking drugs.
That's funny. It's like doing that for Lent, right? Okay, for Lent, we're giving up drinking. Now we're going to just go out dancing and take drugs.
Yeah, we did manage to go out dancing in the middle of that January. And after the night of being out having a good time, we came home and we turned to each other and said, "Oh, we forgot to take drugs."
And you had a good time dancing.
Yeah. So yeah, but I was very happy not going out very much while I was in that relationship. And then after we broke up, I did find myself going out more, fell into another relationship with an introvert, which is kind of tricky because introverts aren't into being out and about and being seen as much as we are. But
right.
I'm an introvert. It's very strange. I feel like I've morphed from being an extrovert to being an introvert through my years.
From the little that I know, you're like a combination, you're a little bit of both, which is kind of good. You can morph. I'm like completely extroverted.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like,
I think I can say this. I'm a very private person.
yeah.
And it's not because I don't trust people or don't like people. It's just that I like the space around me, giving me enough room to just totally be myself. Does that make any sense?
No, that totally makes sense. You like your own private space, but
Yeah.
yet.
So after the second relationship with an introvert, I started going out again, going to the Eagle. That was like around 2005, and I quickly fell into being a part of. I hesitate to say the leather community because there's so much of it and it's so faceted that it's not one community. It's so many different tribes,
Absolutely.
But I easily after around 2005, 6, 7, and was at the Eagle in its current location a lot, and that's when I'd say I really became part of all of that. Even though I'd been leaning towards leather, both when I could wear it and incorporating it into my play with a partner,
right?
From a very young age, like from my early 20s back in Hawaii.
Really?
Yeah, there was one point where, and I wasn't even aware of it. I took some guy home, and he was in my bedroom with me, and he looked around and all that, and we had a great time. And the next day, he was out talking with somebody else apparently, who said to me, "So and so was over at your place," and he says, "You're into leather." And I thought, I'm into leather? I had no idea what they're talking about. And then I went back to my bedroom. This is like me, 22-year-old me back in Hawaii. Looked at my bedroom, I thought, yeah, it's Spartan. There's only that bed there, that dresser there. And there is a motorcycle helmet. And there is my big engineered leather boots that I ride my motorcycle with. And there is a nine-tail whip hanging on the wall as decoration. And I thought,
Oh,
okay,
so well, you know what? You did that is the whole outfit,
I
but
would,
obviously you had it because you had a motorcycle at that time, right?
yeah. But I was inhabiting the kind of mind, the love for leather and all the things it stood for before I was even aware of all the things it stood for.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Thom, you froze. I can still hear you, but you froze. Do you know how to unfreeze?
Am I still frozen?
Yeah, you're still frozen. What is that song?
Oh,
Frozen.
I could leave the studio and come back in.
You want to try and leave the studio and come back in?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Are you sure you can do that?
Yep. It'll take me just a moment.
Okay. All right. Hi. I'm back with you. My guest froze. Streaming is like that's just how it rolls sometimes. And people freeze on camera. So the way we fix this is we have the guests come back in. They leave and come back in. So knock knock, Thom. Are you on your way back into the studio? Let's just see if yes, there you are. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. You look great.
Okay,
too.
great. And yeah, you're moving and everything.
Okay,
I'm like,
excellent.
Thom's frozen. You were frozen describing boots and a motorcycle helmet and a whip. That's where you froze. How very appropriate in our discussion about leather. It's interesting because you went right into 2005. I want to hear about the time in between, right? Because you came here. You were here the same time I was when, the 70s, everything was cool. And by the 80s, this grid cancer started and no one knew what it was. And we were all going out and our friends were all getting sick. You were here for all of that.
Yeah, I was. I arrived in the summer of 1982.
Yeah, that was just as things, nobody knew what it was.
Right. We just thought we were aware of it as the gay cancer. And it was very strange. I wasn't so well integrated into the whole gay scene at that time to be losing friends that early on. That started a little bit later after being here for a few years, after I was here for like maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, because it would have, because they didn't really start distributing cocktails. They were off label prior to that. The Dallas Buyer drugs you could get them. But when they started mainstreaming the cocktails was like, I think it was like the 1992 and 1993 when they made them available to people.
Early in the 90s, they were still in clinical trials.
Right.
They were still trying out drugs, and people were still dying. And some of those drugs actually made them sicker than they were before they started.
Well, AZT, I lost so many. It was like the kiss of death. And AZT made me not, when we went through the pandemic, it made me not trust the CDC because of what had happened with AZT. They were giving that to everybody, and it was a terrible drug, and people were dying, and they continued to give people AZT. So you went through that whole time period.
Yes.
And what brought me to the Generations Project for that presentation we did for 9/11, a lot of my presentation was wrapped up in not just 9/11, the fact that where they put the wall of all the lost people was right by St. Vincent's. And St. Vincent's for me was where I said goodbye to a lot of people, or put on paraphernalia to go in the room. My God, they made you put on the kind of stuff you had to put on during the pandemic.
Right.
And slip the trays under the doors. So that's what I remember about the late 80s into the 90s.
Yeah, for me it was a little bit of a different experience. Like I said, I hadn't been here long enough to make the network of friends.
Yeah.
That included people who were passing on early on through that pandemic, and that was indeed a pandemic, right?
Yeah, it was.
Didn't start losing friends, people I knew didn't start dying until the late 80s. Yeah, late 80s.
I'm sure, and anybody you knew in San Francisco, because San Francisco was really devastated
as well
by that whole thing. Now, But you pay it forward. You do an AIDS ride now.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, the ride that I do benefits the HIV and AIDS services at the center here on 13th Street.
So that's our LGBTQ Center.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes, yes. And I have a history with them that's pretty, I think, pretty amazing, and which is one of the reasons why I keep going back and doing the ride. Here we go. Okay, so when I contracted HIV in 1990, excuse me, in 1987.
Late 80s.
I didn't realize that I had HIV for another 5 years because I was with my one partner and I had, no cause to think about it.
You had no symptoms.
I had no symptoms for the first 10 years.
Okay, so this is very important what you're saying. Okay.
Okay.
Because like this stuff never comes up, and people like you that don't have any symptoms, they still don't have a really good answer for that, and that's what needs to be studied.
Actually, the science of the virus is that for a relatively healthy person, from time of infection to time of getting sick and actually developing AIDS, where your immune system starts being attacked and overwhelmed by the virus, that's usually 10 years.
Tom, the early strains, I have to tell you, I don't know everyone I knew that got infected was really like, and that's what makes me think the strains, well, just like there's so many correlations between the pandemic virus and HIV AIDS for me, so many.
Yeah.
And there these different strains thing. There were people that were long-term that I knew that came later, right? Like you, that didn't manifest itself, but early on in the game, my God.
Yes.
And gone.
Absolutely. For people who were, regularly healthy immune systems and weren't challenging their immune systems by partying all the time and everything,
right.
the duration for the virus to take effect and really start breaking you down is about 10 years.
Right.
For those of us who were like doing poppers all the time and partying and everything all the time, our immune systems broke down sooner. I understand it and know this. I've actually dabbled in some things that have challenged my immune system, and I've watched it, checked it, and adjust my behavior. Like poppers. Did you know that doing poppers shuts down your T cells for 24 hours?
I did not know that, and I remember everybody doing poppers on the dance floor.
So imagine if you're doing poppers a lot for a long period of time, and you've been exposed to the virus.
Right.
The journey from initial infection to immune system breaking down is probably going to be shorter.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah.
So when you realized you were diagnosed, of course, in the time you were diagnosed, you could go on the medications.
Not quite. I was diagnosed with HIV in 1992.
That was early on, right?
And that was in the middle of the time between my first exposure and when I got sick. I got very sick with AIDS. I don't talk about it much, but I got very sick with AIDS in 1996. I was in the hospital twice.
Jesus.
The first time was because the drug that was prescribed to me to fight off the PCP
pneumonia
infection, I caused a very bad reaction in my body. So I had to stop doing that, moved on to a second defense drug for the pneumonia, which after 2 months' time proved to not be working well. But when I got that bad reaction, I was in the hospital for a week.
Wow.
And moving to another medication. The first one was Bactrim. The second was Melpro.
I remember them prescribing Bactrim. What was the second one?
Melpro, which was kind of all right to take because it was yellow and tasty, but it didn't do the job. It didn't
do anything, right?
Didn't do much. So I did get really sick, and 2 months later, I'm back to the hospital. Long story short, I went through a desensitization process wherein they had me in ICU over a weekend, all hooked up to all the possible monitors that they need to have me hooked up to monitor my body reactions to the drug, and they would slowly drip Bactrim into my body and wait for my body to be able to accept it.
How
And
how incredible. You know, I hear lots of stories on this show, and
yeah,
thank you for sharing that. What hospital was this?
that was Cabrini.
I remember I said goodbye to a lot of people in Cabrini, and God
Yeah,
bless them. They're no
yeah,
longer here,
yeah.
but the fact that
So
they knew how to administer that
right,
drug to you saved your life.
it did. It totally did. The first time we tried that, my body rejected the drug again, and so the doctor came to me and said, "Your body can't tolerate this right now. Do you want to wait 24 hours and try again?" And I said yes. At that point, my fever was really high. My blood pressure was all fucked up. Excuse me, all messed up. And I
Right.
spent the night literally sleeping in between ice mattresses. Got up in the next morning and we started again. And that time, my body was okay with the amount of milk of Bactrim
Right.
that I needed to survive. Yeah. Now, why I'm telling all of this because it ties back to the center.
Yes.
Um, during that
And
time,
why you do what you do for the center.
during that time, I was with an employer that had a switching to a different insurance carrier who had non existing condition clause in their coverage.
God.
So I did not have coverage or anything having to do with HIV, and and all of this happened in '96, 1 year after I did my first AIDS ride for the center. When I did that first ride in '95, my first training ride doing 2 laps around Central Park, I thought I was going to have a heart attack.
Oh,
And I
God.
didn't have my health insurance wasn't kicked in, so I went to the center knowing that they had the gay and lesbian health clinic, community clinic.
Community clinic. Yeah.
Yeah, and they when they found out I was doing the ride, they welcomed me in, and they made sure that my heart was okay, and they then took care of all my HIV concerns. So it
Right.
was through them that I got into Cabrini. So in effect, the center saved my life.
Wow. First of all, thank you so much for telling this story.
Yeah.
Our LGBT center on 13th Street is amazing. Was it all renovated when you were there, or that came
Oh
after?
no, no, no,
Yeah, it
no.
was like I
It
remember.
was still very funky, but Keith Haring had already done the bathroom.
Right. Okay. There you go. And isn't that all that matters? It's such a beautiful center, and it addresses all the needs of the community. It's we're blessed to have it. And how cool that you, first of all, hearing your story, which I had no idea, the fact that you survived, you were lucky enough to survive, to get the drugs that would really take care of everything. It really is a blessing.
It is. It is. I know how fortunate I am, and I'm
I
very
know you
grateful.
do.
And I
Right.
don't. And it's strange. It's interesting. I initially I had a real problem with survivor's guilt, like for many, many, many years. You know, the hardest thing I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The hardest thing for me about having AIDS was surviving when so many others did not. You know.
Right.
Yeah. But
Right.
the interesting thing is that the older I get, the further along into my years I go, with less years in front of me, survivor's guilt kind of fades away a bit.
No, darling, these are your years. You just go for it. You earned them.
And I am going for it.
And
I'm
your give back, okay, your give back to the community and paying it forward. I'm curious, being through what you've been through, and you could have died of AIDS. What is for you the most frustrating about the generations, the kids that are coming up? You know, they take prep. What is the most frustrating thing for you, or challenging? Let me use that word, of talking to them, of getting them to get it.
um, was simply that they don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear it.
They don't want
But
to hear about it.
but so much so that I can tell easily while meeting people and talking with them whether they're open to knowing about their heritage, or they're in more of a hedonistic mode, still trying to explore who they are by going that route and don't want to hear anything at all. And I can spot that right off the bat, you know.
Right.
And my time's precious now. I don't waste my time with the ones who don't care.
Right. Right. If they're not going to listen, then you don't waste your time.
Right.
It's
Right.
funny because you would think there were so many parallels for me during the pandemic and AIDS. And even when they came out with the vaccinations that we took and everything, I questioned everything all along the way. And right, my husband's in the hospital right now being treated with pneumonia, and I've been over there drilling the doctors, and one of them said to me, you certainly know all the right questions to ask. I said, it's not that I know. I said, I have been down this route with people hooked up to a million machines. I want to know what are all the different medicines that are in those bags. Okay, what do all those numbers mean on the machines? If you don't react to this drug, what do you think the reaction will be? And when I brought a nurse friend over there with me, they're like, Wendy, you're a drill sergeant. I'm like, I'm not, because you know what, Thom, if anything were to happen to you right now, you would be the exact same way. We've been down that road
Yes.
before.
Yes. I actually was very cautious about what I was putting into my body back in those days.
Right.
And I was fortunate at that time in the mid 90s, I was working on a project for Roche Pharmaceuticals. So I was able to read all of the medical literature and understand all of that, right? And I could
Right.
read all the information about all the studies that they were doing. And I could see, okay, that study's not working. That drug's not working yet. That drug's not working yet. That drug's not working yet. And only when the 3-drug combination was approved by the FDA.
That was the initial one, right?
Yeah. And the timing was spectacularly good. It's a tough one for me. You have to actually be okay.
Right. So you froze, but you came back. Thank God, because we only have a couple of minutes left. So what would you like to share with our audience about how the generations can be bridged and why they need to be bridged, why the history in the LGBTQ community is so important?
Yeah, well, we can't really move forward with the strength and power and force that we need to
I agree.
without understanding everything that's behind us.
Right.
That we as a community, as a tribe, as a people have gone through and come through to get here. That's why it's important. And that's where I think connecting the generations is so very important. It's a sad thing. I'm upset, as we all are, about Next Benedict, the teenager in Oklahoma who was beaten to death.
Just read it. Right. Horrible.
Yeah. And people have to understand that would not have happened if we hadn't come to a place where the GOP bigots have been sanctioning hate for trans people.
Endorsing it, revving it up, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and it's really, really scary.
It's very scary. It's very scary.
People's heads. Like, I can't believe everything we've been through, and now marriage equality is going to come up for grabs. Getting people their hormones is certainly up for grabs now in places. It is such an insane time, and that sector of the country and the amount of people that believe this garbage is beyond belief to me. It's horrible.
Right.
And I don't want to say I'm fearful for the election, because fearful just, it keeps you frozen in place. But you just said it, as a community, no matter young, old, in between, no matter what, we have better band together.
Yes. And we have to, and being aware of all that we've come through together,
right,
empowers us to move forward through all of this in the future.
Right.
So that's the main reason I think that the intergenerational connecting and sharing needs to happen.
Well, I want to thank you for every single thing that you're doing out there, and you continue to pay it forward. You look amazing. Isn't that part of it, that you can still look amazing, right? No matter what condition you are, whatever you're doing, you look fabulous.
Thank you, Wendy. So do you. So do you.
Well, thank you. I'm embalmed. I always like to take a picture with my guests before the show.
Oh, do that. I'm gonna
little thing I do with my camera. So cheese and another.
And what you can't see is I'm doing screenshots at the same time.
I did. I could hear your screenshots. That's hilarious. Good for you. Good for you. I love it. You're fighting back. Thank you, and thank you for the work you're doing with the Generations Project. They have an upcoming. Their awards is coming up. When is that?
Next week, Thursday, the 29th of February. It's our Leap Jennies, because it's happening on Leap Day.
Yeah, it is. It's on the 29th. Wow.
Right. Are you going to be there?
I know I did get something about it. I would actually love to go.
Yes, get a ticket. Be there.
I totally support everything they do. Thank you so much for being here. You have a great rest of week. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. And good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.